I saw I'm Still Here, and I am ready to proclaim this film a masterpiece, and I can't wait to share my thoughts about this film, a breathtaking performance from Fernanda Torres, and this film's Oscar chances. And the reason I'm calling I'm Still Here a masterpiece is because at the nucleus of this film is a masterclass performance from Fernanda Torres that I believe expertly realizes everything that Walter Salles, the director of this film, is trying to capture in the emotion of this storytelling. And that's why in today's review, we need to start with the actress of this film, Fernanda Torres. Torres stars as Eunice Paiva and tells the true story of this Brazilian woman who must reconcile with her husband's disappearance at the hands of a military dictatorship in Brazil from the 1960s to the 1980s. He's kidnapped, I believe, in the early 1970s. This mother turned activist, she must put all of her energy into now raising this family and discovering the truth of her husband's whereabouts as her home around her crumbles due to the political turmoil in Brazil at this time. In this performance that Torres gives, it demonstrates a few key ideas of this movie: the search for justice, reconciliation in search of closure, what it means to be a mother, and the quickness of government collapse. Those are all big ideas within this movie, all found within the Fernanda Torres character. And Torres' performance as Anissa, it shows the complexity of motherhood in the unimaginable. And I think that's what makes this film pretty brilliant and incredibly emotionally engaging while watching it. This movie structures itself to mirror Brazil's government at the time. The first act is the turmoil, then we have the collapse, which is the second act, and then the resolution, which is the final aspect of this movie. And in this movie, it is understood through the disappearance of the husband slash father character, Congressman Rubens Paiva. We see his lead up, the disappearance, and the family resolution at place within this movie. In simpler terms, this movie is about the domestic household, the destruction of that, and then the journey to reestablish a family in disrepair. The power of I'm Still Here is its storytelling, and that's what I believe is resonating with audiences right now, and it's why it's overperforming at this year's Oscars. And I believe this film has gained such fan fervor, especially in places like Brazil, for these people who lived through this recent turmoil depicted in this film. This family story is resonant to people's family history and probably feels therapeutic to remind the world, quite literally, I'm still here despite it all. And I say that because I know I've had a ton of people clamoring for this review for my channel for a while. So I thank you all to everyone who's watching, and I hope you consider subscribing and keeping the conversation about this movie going down in my comments. Focusing back up on the Fernanda Torres performance of this movie, which I've said is the central performance, is I think there is something just so brilliant with the way that she is able to balance everything that is being asked of her in this movie. And the moment I realized that I was watching a masterclass performance from her, it's the moment the army of the Brazilian dictatorship knocks on her door and takes her husband. In this moment, she is operating in a lot of different modes. For instance, she has kids in the house, and the youngest ones are sleeping. A few of them are outside the house, and instantly she recognizes the situation of what is about to happen and the dangers her family is in, at the same time realizing she needs to keep peace within the household. This sequence is expertly written by Salles, and it is especially well directed and acted in this moment. And there is this one moment that's just so small, but it's really just this tension found within it, where one of the teenage daughters comes home with one of her school friends, and they walk through the doors as the situation is unfolding. And without a second thought, Torres' character essentially says, actually, you can spend the night with your friend. You guys can go now. And basically just wants to get her daughter out of there into safety. It's that quick instinct, that maternal bond and realization of the moment that I think makes this film really resonant, to put yourself in that shoes and like to be able to think that calmly and rational to protect your children in the face of such scrutiny and terrifying circumstances in which this character finds herself in. It's moments like that throughout the film that really show you what makes this performance from Torres special. And it's the turmoil that you feel in Torres' performance. the terror of the situation, but needing to hold back all your true emotions to project strength to ensure your children's safety. One thing I want you to do while watching this film is study Torres's face in this specific scene that I'm talking about, where she begins to display fear as these army men are going through her house, and as her children are walking throughout her house and her husband's being taken away. You see her face tremble momentarily throughout these scenes. They're ever so slightly, but notice when it happens. That's the key of the writing, and that's the key of the performance and the nuance. It's always right when the child is out of eyesight, so as to ensure they don't panic. It's these little nuances throughout Torres's performance throughout the film that makes this performance nothing short of breathtaking. And she has this throughout her entire performance, which is centered around control of emotions and the turmoil of fantasy for her children's protection versus the reality of her family's situation. That is what she is having to operate. And specifically, there is this other expertly acted scene from Torres in the second act of this movie where the character is in her husband's study after learning some news regarding his disappearance. And in this moment, the pain of the situation becomes overbearing and her emotions come to the forefront, one of the few times that they do in this movie. And her youngest daughter, a few moments later, walks into the door and because her doll needs fixing. And she reverts back to her maternal instincts to shield her youngest daughter. It's the quick switch that she is able to do, that she is able to capture in this film, that makes this movie feel raw. It makes it feel real. It's so upsetting, but it's also such a masterclass performance. And that balance of which I speak about, it is what the director Walter Salles does so effortlessly in this film. This is a story about a family and specifically the life of a remarkable woman. And this is in many ways is also a coming of age film as we are experiencing a lot of the events through the children's eyes in this movie. Not necessarily a point of view, but you definitely see moments where the children are forefront at the screen. There are 5 children in this film. One is college aged, one is about 16, one is preteen / teenager, and then the 2 youngest, a son and a daughter, are, I would guess, somewhere between the age of 6 to 8. Each of these children have different understandings of the situation unfolding. The eldest daughter has been sent to London with her family friends for her studies as well as her safety. The teen has a better understanding of the political situation, and then the youngest are being shielded as much as possible. And there is a moment, without spoiling it, in the third act where the youngest son, Marcelo, who wrote the book that this movie is based off, he has a conversation with one of his sisters. And the conversation is essentially the question, when did you realize what was going on? And that is such a fundamentally beautiful idea of this movie, is this mother shielding these kids from it, but yet the terror does creep through. And that's what this movie is beautifully able to capture, because there are, of course, moments of terror at the forefront of this movie, but there is also a feeling of beauty and even, in a sense, nostalgia as captured through the eyes of the film's children, where we see the beauty of Brazil at play. They are playing soccer on the streets. They are living by the beach. The import of pop music such as the Beatles, like, it really is able to capture this moment in time in the early 1970s as everything around them is starting to collapse. And at this point of this movie, we have Anissa's goal as a mother during this period is to give her children a happy childhood despite it all. This idea is captured through reoccurring symbolic imagery throughout the film, specifically imagery that is quite literally displayed as photographs. Each act has a key family photo as a central image and idea within each structure. The first act has the entire family together at a beach for a birthday party. The second act has the family minus the dad posing for an international publication. And then the third act is a photo taking in the 21st century. And there's this incredibly well-written moment in the second act where Torres' character is getting all of her children to pose for this photo, and the photographer wants the family to look solemn, and Torres refuses and tells her kids to smile. and the eldest daughter doesn't. And it's this brilliant display of writing to show the family's situation and how they each respond, and also what their instincts are. Torres doesn't want these children to necessarily feel the pain and the suffering that the world is trying to tell them they should have due to this situation. Obviously, it is an incredibly sad situation, but she is still trying to give them as much of a normal childhood at all possible. Wrapping up, what I find this film to do so powerfully is especially in its final act. And it's when this family is finally given answers and why that is important. And that's what this movie hits on. The why something like this is important, and the significance and how it ties back to the central thesis of this movie, which is located in the title. It is right there for us. I'm still here. People deserve resolution, which in the case of Anissa, she seeks that. And time may help heal all wounds, but those scars are still there. And that is the brutal finale of this movie, which I don't think is a spoiler. We have the film jumps to the present day, or I should say in 2014, 5 years before she passes at the age of 89. For the last decade of her life, she is afflicted with Alzheimer's. And there is this moment where Fernanda Montenegro appears in the film as the older version of Inessa. And in this stage of her life, and without uttering a single word, Montenegro is 95, I believe. She delivers a heartbreakingly powerful performance that captures the trauma and the pain of her real life situation. And it's really the only times we see Inessa ever truly break in this film. And she does so all through her eyes. It's not a tearful recognition. It is not a breakdown. It is not this emotional swell. It is just completely centered in the eyes. And in looking at her, you can understand that she's remembering the pain. And I also believe she remembers and she locates the closure. That resolution, it left such a powerful vibrance to the end of this film of everything that this movie is trying to comment on. I think it is a pretty masterclass performance from Montenegro in this film's finale, coupled with the Fernanda Torres performance throughout the rest of the movie. I think it really just lands this idea of I'm still here and I am going to continue on despite it all. It's a really powerful, provocative movie that I found wholly engaging, perfectly realized, perfectly acted. Everyone in this movie is exceptionally well cast in this movie. I mentioned Fernanda Torres because she is definitely the central performance. Everyone in this movie, from the littlest of the children to the teenagers to when they grow up, every actor is so well realized in this movie, and it makes for something very special. Before I get to my final thoughts, I will just say quick Oscar predictions for this movie. I'm predicting it to win International Feature, and maybe that's hopeful thinking. Maybe I am writing too much on the belief that Emilia Perez has destroyed / squandered any goodwill that it had. This is a far better movie than Emilia Perez. I think in terms of that, I could see it pulling the International Feature. I don't know if it's going to get the acting win. I do think it is between Fernanda Torres and Demi Moore. Personally, I like both a lot, and I'd be pretty happy if either one won. I think if I had to vote, I would say Torres, but that could switch tomorrow. Like, it is kind of neck and neck, and my love for both of these movies is about the same. And I don't think this film will win Best Picture. I think it has a better chance than people are saying it. Right now, I have it as the third most likely. I think it is behind Anora and The Brutalist. So there is a lot to be really happy about. I really do hope this film receives recognition and support because this movie is well worth your time. And I'm pretty excited seeing this movie, talking about this movie. And I hope you guys all like this review. Final review, 4.5 out of 5 stars from me. So thank you so much for watching this video. To everyone who's stuck around, if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to my channel below for more movie reviews.